The air on Xar'quon-9 was thick with acrid smoke, mingling with the scent of fear and desperation. Captain Ethan Voss crouched behind a crumbling metal wall, scanning the desolate landscape through his visor. His squad moved silently beside him, their breaths controlled, their weapons ready. The mission was simple: extract the captives and get out. But nothing about the planet or the situation ever felt simple. Ahead of them loomed the Thraxxis compound, a fortress carved into the jagged cliffs, bristling with alien technology and guarded by ruthless soldiers. Inside were the slaves, hundreds of them, abducted from planets across the galaxy. Ethan's orders were clear: rescue as many as possible, especially the high-value targets. It was the human way to protect the weak, even if the weak weren't human. "Move," Ethan whispered into his comm, signaling his team to advance. They moved swiftly through the compound's outer defenses, disabling sentries and hacking security systems. Ethan's focus was unshakable, but beneath the calm exterior, a storm brewed. He had seen the horrors of Thraxxis cruelty firsthand: the chains, the beatings, the utter disregard for life. They breached the main gate, slipping through corridors lit by flickering red lights. The faint sound of alien voices echoed from within the compound. They were getting closer. The captives were just beyond the final door. As the team pushed forward, a sudden explosion rocked the structure, throwing debris and dust into the air. The Thraxxis were onto them. Ethan cursed under his breath, motioning for his team to cover their flanks. Bursting through the final door, they entered a vast chamber lined with cells. The stench of sweat, blood, and fear hit them like a wave. Ethan's eyes scanned the prisoners, aliens of all shapes and sizes. But one figure caught his attention. In a far corner, bound by heavy restraints, sat an alien girl. Her delicate, almost ethereal appearance stood in stark contrast to the brutality of her surroundings. Her pale skin shimmered faintly under the dim light, and her large, violet eyes were filled with quiet defiance, despite her weakened state. "Sir, we've got her," one of his soldiers reported, nodding toward the girl. Ethan approached cautiously, his weapon lowered. "Can you stand?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. The girl blinked at him, her eyes flickering with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. She tried to speak, but her voice was a faint whisper. Ethan knelt beside her, carefully breaking the restraints with his plasma cutter. As the shackles fell away, the girl collapsed into his arms, too weak to move. "I've got you," he murmured, lifting her effortlessly. As they turned to leave, alarms blared through the compound. The Thraxxis reinforcements were coming. With the alien girl cradled in his arms, Ethan and his team fought their way back through the compound, bullets and plasma fire filling the air. Their escape was narrow, but they made it to their ship, the Horizon, just as the compound erupted in flames. As the ship broke free of Xar'quon-9's atmosphere, Ethan glanced at the alien girl. Her eyes, half closed, locked onto his. Though she was free, something deeper stirred within her, a desire to repay the human soldier who had saved her life. Aboard the Horizon, the hum of the ship's engines was a constant reminder of safety, but for Lyra, it was unfamiliar and overwhelming. The alien girl sat quietly in the medical bay, watching the human crew move around her with cautious glances. She was free now, yet everything around her felt foreign. She tugged at the simple tunic they had given her, its rough fabric a sharp contrast to the cold, metallic walls. Captain Ethan Voss entered the room, his imposing figure immediately drawing her attention. He had been the one who rescued her, the one who shattered the chains that bound her. In her culture, a debt like that could never go unpaid. "How are you feeling?" Voss asked, his voice gentler than she expected from someone so battle-hardened. Lyra didn't answer at first, her gaze lowering to the floor. The words in his language came slowly to her, each one carefully formed in her mind before she dared speak. "I owe you my life," she finally said, her voice soft but resolute. Ethan shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." I did what anyone would do. Lyra's brows furrowed in confusion. Her people did not see life so simply. A life saved was a life that now belonged to its rescuer, and she had been taught that such a debt was sacred. She stood up abruptly, her limbs still shaky from her time in captivity, and bowed deeply before him. I will serve you, Captain. It is my duty. Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. This wasn't the first time he had rescued someone who misunderstood human ways, but Lyra's determination seemed unshakable. That's not how it works, Lyra. You're free now. You don't have to serve anyone. Lyra blinked, genuinely perplexed. But I must. In my world, a debt cannot go unpaid. I will clean your quarters, prepare your meals, anything you need. He couldn't help but smile at the odd formality of it. I appreciate the offer, but you don't need to do that. Your life is your own now. Her large, violet eyes searched his face, as if trying to find an answer in his expression. Freedom, true freedom, was a concept she had never known. Her people had lived in peace, bound by duty and tradition, and then they were enslaved by the Thraxxis. The idea that she could live for herself felt alien to her. Over the next few days, Lyra tried repeatedly to repay Ethan, finding small ways to show her gratitude. She cleaned the armory, repaired minor damage to his gear, and even brought him meals, despite the other crew members' curious stares. Each time, Ethan would gently tell her it wasn't necessary, but she persisted, her desire to repay him deeply ingrained in her. But it wasn't just about the debt. There was something about Ethan, his kindness, his strength, that made her want to be near him. He had seen her at her weakest, yet treated her with dignity, something the Thraxxis had stolen from her. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet of the mess hall, Ethan finally spoke what had been on his mind. You don't have to prove anything, Lyra. I didn't save you to earn your loyalty. I saved you because no one deserves to live like that. Lyra looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. Then let me stay by your side. I have no place to go. Ethan nodded slowly, realizing that perhaps, in her own way, she was right. She didn't owe him anything, but maybe, just maybe, they needed each other. The horizon sped through hyperspace, a quiet tension gripping the crew. They had received a distress call from a nearby human colony under attack by the Thraxxis. Captain Ethan Voss stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the swirling void outside the viewport. It wasn't just another mission. The Thraxxis had grown bolder, striking deeper into human territories, and now it was up to him to protect the colony from annihilation. Captain, we'll arrive in 10 minutes, called out Lieutenant Garza from the navigation console. Ethan nodded but didn't reply. His mind was on Lyra. Over the past few days, she had insisted on proving herself useful, though he had repeatedly told her she owed him nothing. He admired her determination, but this battle would be different. The Thraxxis were brutal, and he didn't want her anywhere near the fight. Lyra appeared at his side, her presence quiet but commanding in a way that belied her slender frame. She wore the standard utility jumpsuit the crew had provided her, and despite her frailty, there was a strength in her eyes that couldn't be ignored. I'm going with you, she said, her voice steady. Ethan turned to face her, shaking his head. No. It's too dangerous. I can help, Lyra insisted, stepping closer. You've seen what I can do. I can sense things the Thraxxis try to hide. He hesitated, remembering the day they had escaped Xar'quon-9. Lyra had been instrumental in their survival, using an uncanny awareness to guide them through traps and ambushes. There was more to her than met the eye, and deep down, he knew she wasn't as helpless as she appeared. Lyra, he began, this isn't your fight. Her violet eyes darkened with emotion. It is now. They destroyed my people. They took everything from me. Let me fight back. Ethan studied her for a long moment before giving a slow nod. All right. But you stay close to me, understood? The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and the colony planet came into view on the horizon. Flames lit up the surface like beacons of destruction, and the Thraxxis warships hovered ominously in the skies above. Alarms blared across the horizon as they prepared for battle. "Prepare for ground assault," Ethan ordered. His squad gathered in the cargo bay, weapons loaded and faces grim. Lyra stood beside him, her expression unreadable but determined. The descent to the planet's surface was rough, the transport shuttle shaking violently as it dodged incoming fire. When they landed, chaos greeted them, buildings burning, civilians fleeing, and the Thraxxis marching forward like a tide of death. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, but his focus remained sharp. The squad pushed through the battlefield, engaging Thraxxis soldiers with precision. Plasma fire lit the air, and explosions shook the ground beneath them. Lyra stayed by Ethan's side, moving with a grace that surprised him. She wasn't just surviving, she was contributing, guiding them through the carnage with an almost supernatural awareness. At one point, Ethan found himself pinned down by heavy fire. He could feel the heat of the blasts closing in, and just as he thought they might be overrun, Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly. She raised her hand, and a pulse of energy rippled through the air, disorienting the Thraxxis soldiers. In the confusion, Ethan and his squad managed to regain control and push forward. "How did you?" Ethan started to ask, but Lyra cut him off. "There's no time. We need to reach the command center. It's where their leader is." Despite the chaos of battle, Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange sense of awe toward Lyra. She had saved them, again, but at what cost? As they fought their way deeper into the colony, he could see the strain on her face, the toll it was taking on her body. The battle raged on, and as they neared the heart of the Thraxxis forces, Ethan knew this wasn't just a skirmish. It was a turning point, for the colony, for humanity, and for Lyra. Whatever powers she had, they were only just beginning to reveal themselves. The aftermath of the battle left the colony in ruins, but the Thraxxis had retreated. The Horizon's crew worked tirelessly to evacuate the survivors and assess the damage. Amidst the smoldering wreckage, Captain Ethan Voss stood at the edge of the command center, watching the horizon as the sun began to rise over the charred landscape. Victory had come, but it had come at a cost. Behind him, Lyra lay unconscious in the medbay of the ship. The power she had unleashed on the battlefield had saved them all, but the strain had left her body fragile, drained. Ethan had carried her back to the horizon after the battle, his mind racing with questions. What had she done? How had she summoned such energy? And more importantly, what was happening to her now? The door to the medbay slid open with a hiss as Ethan entered, his gaze falling on Lyra's still form. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale, the glow that had once radiated from her now dim. Dr. Patel, the ship's medic, glanced at Ethan and shook her head. "She's stable, but whatever she did, it's taken a toll." "I've never seen anything like this," Patel said, her voice heavy with concern. "Her body is recovering, but it's as if her energy, her life force, has been temporarily depleted." Ethan nodded, leaning against the wall, his arms crossed. His mind churned with uncertainty. Lyra had become more than just a rescued slave to him. She had become a partner, an ally, and someone he genuinely cared about. Now, watching her in this vulnerable state, he felt a protectiveness he hadn't expected. Hours passed. The Horizon was back in orbit, and the crew continued with repairs, but Ethan remained by Lyra's side. Then, in the stillness of the room, Lyra stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, the familiar violet glow returning, though dimmer than before. She blinked up at Ethan, disoriented but conscious. "Ethan," she whispered. He moved closer, relief washing over him. "I'm here. You're safe." Lyra sat up slowly, her movements weak but determined. She touched her temples, as if trying to make sense of what had happened. I saw them, she murmured. My people. In my mind. It was like they were reaching out to me, guiding me. Ethan frowned. Your people? You mean, in your visions? Lyra nodded, her eyes distant. Yes. It wasn't just a memory. They showed me something important. The Thraxxis aren't just conquerors. They're searching for something. Something ancient, buried deep in the galaxy. Ethan's brow furrowed, the weight of her words sinking in. What are they looking for? I don't know, Lyra admitted, her voice soft but resolute. But it's tied to my people. And it's tied to the powers I've been using. There's more to this than just war. A heavy silence filled the room as Ethan processed what she had said. The Thraxxis, their cruelty, and now the mystery of their true motives, it was all connected. And Lyra, with her abilities, was at the center of it. I have to find out, she said. Her voice stronger now. I have to understand what my people wanted me to see. Ethan nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. This wasn't over. The battle had only been the beginning. There were larger forces at play, and Lyra was the key to unlocking them. Then we'll find out together, he said, his voice firm with resolve. Whatever the Thraxxis are after, we'll stop them. You're not in this alone, Lyra. She smiled faintly, a glimmer of hope returning to her eyes. Thank you, Ethan. For everything. As the horizon sailed into the vastness of space, a new mission lay ahead of them, a mission not just to survive, but to uncover the truth. The galaxy was larger and more dangerous than either of them had imagined, but with Lyra's newfound strength and Ethan's unwavering resolve, they were ready to face whatever came next.